What's going on, everybody, and welcome back to the channel. So I will be making schedule predictions for every single Power 5 team in college football for this upcoming season, and I'll also do a subsequent conference standings video once I finish every single team in a specific conference and just get through all of those, and then I'll do a synopsis of all of my schedule predictions for that conference. Those synopsis videos will be like a wrap-up, and they'll be coming later on in August as we get closer to the start of the season. And yeah, I've got a lot of individual games to get through before we get there, so be on the lookout for a lot of that content coming. Anyway, let's go ahead and get into the Baylor schedule predictions. So some quick thoughts on the Baylor program as a whole heading into 2022. And this is a program that I have really high hopes for in the future under Dave Aranda. I think he's one of the best young coaches out there right now. He has an incredibly bright future ahead of him, and therefore the entire Baylor program has an incredibly bright future ahead of them. Now, this year is an interesting one, as they did lose a decent amount of talent from last year, but they still return a lot as well, and the Big 12 is kind of wide open this year for them to make a legitimate push in the conference. Now, there are a lot of very good teams in this conference, and I think it'll be one of the most evenly matched conferences out there as a whole. But I don't think there's any great teams in the conference at the same time. So it leaves some openings for a lot of those, upper tier teams that aren't necessarily great. But if things fall their way, they could make a push to win the conference. And I think, that is good and bad for Baylor because it gives them that opening. But then also there's a lot of those very good teams here. So it can add up to some close losses at the same time. Regardless, though, the future of this program is bright as long as Aranda is around. So go ahead and look at some of the games that just aren't really worth talking about too much because the opponents just don't have much of a chance of winning, barring something catastrophic. And those games are Albany and Texas State. Those two teams have no real hope against Baylor. Not worth speaking about. So the first game we are going to talk about is in Week 2 when Baylor goes on the road at BYU, and this game is going to be very difficult. BYU at home is an incredibly tough team to beat. They are not the kind of group of 5 team you can just take for granted and take lightly. They are very, very capable of winning this game. Now, I think Baylor is a better team than BYU, but this is a dangerous, dangerous matchup. Definitely one to keep an eye on. I think Baylor gets the win here. Very close game on the road, though. Huge one to keep an eye out for. This could really start to swing their season really early on. If they lose here, the season starts to stack up pretty tough against them, but a win here helps propel them forward. Week 4 is the next game up, and they are at Iowa State, and this is another really, really tough one. Iowa State is a very good team. Now, they are losing a lot, but they're still going to be very good. Not a team that you can overlook by any means. I think Baylor is better than them overall. And it's a tough place to play too, though. Going at Iowa State is never an easy ask. Another one similar to BYU where I think Baylor is the better team, though it could be super close. It will be super close. It could go either way. Could certainly be a loss. I'm going to say Baylor gets a tough, close win here as well against Iowa State, but another one that could be a swing game for the rest of the season. And then in Week 5, they play Oklahoma State at home. And Oklahoma State, I think, is arguably the best team in the Big 12 next year. They are very, very good. They return an extreme amount of talent. And they are very well coached. They have one of the most experienced staffs and rosters out there. They're a tough out. And another one where Baylor is at home this time, but another one that's super close, very, very hotly contested game. Could go either way. I'm going to say Oklahoma State gets the win here. And Baylor just doesn't quite pull it off. I think Oklahoma State is a little bit better than Baylor at this point. But another one, very hotly contested game, very tight, could go either way. Another one, super interested to see. A lot of the Big 12 this year, surprisingly for me, just from the outside looking in, it doesn't seem like too interesting of a conference this year. But then when you really look at it, there's a lot of teams that are in that same range, and it could lead to a lot of very interesting games. This is one of them, but I'm going to go with Oklahoma State. Then the next team up is at West Virginia on a Thursday, but they do have a bye week before that, so it kind of makes up for that weird Thursday slot. And West Virginia, another team that I think is at the very least a bowl caliber team. They've got JT Daniels taking over at quarterback now. They're going to be very good, and they're on the road at West Virginia, and that's another one. Not an easy matchup by any means, and on the road, not an easy place to play. I do think Baylor is the better team here. By a little bit, though, I think Baylor probably gets the win. One, again, just like the other ones we talked about, very close, though. not one that you can easily look at as a guaranteed game either way. I'm going to go with Baylor in that one, but still one to keep an eye on. And then you've played Kansas at home, and now Kansas is definitely the bottom feeder in the Big 12. They're really the only team in the Big 12, I think, that is just noticeably worse than the rest of the conference. I don't think they have much of a shot at doing anything too impressive. And that's not to say that they're a pushover. They are a kind of team that can get some upsets here and there. Just look at the Texas game last year. But it still seems very much unlikely. I'm going to say Baylor gets a pretty easy win there at home. Following week, they're at Texas Tech, a team that they are definitely better than, but a team that is also still a good team, probably a bowl-eligible team, and they're on the road for it. So not an easy game, not a pushover kind of game, one to definitely watch out for. I'm going to say Baylor gets the win. I think they are just a better roster overall. I really like Aranda, and I think he's going to have them rolling. But another one, keep an eye on. Then the week after, they are at Oklahoma, and this is one where Oklahoma has a better roster than they do. And it's not dramatically better, but it is a little bit better roster than they do at this point. I know Brent Venables is in year one there, and there's a lot of things that can go wrong in year one when you're a first-year head coach, first-time head coach especially. But I think that on the road there at Oklahoma, with all the tough games Baylor's had to play, I think they slip up and lose that one. It's not an upset by any means. I think Oklahoma will probably be favored in that game. Like I said, I think they are the better team, and they are at home. So I'm going to go with Oklahoma in that one. Don't count Baylor out by any means. Baylor is certainly good enough to win this game. I think it's definitely a game that's within one possession of each other. But I'm going to say Oklahoma gets that one to beat Baylor there at home. And then they play Kansas State at home, and another one that is really interesting. Now, I think Baylor is better than Kansas State, but Kansas State is a very good team, similar to Iowa State, I think, and as far as their caliber of team. They're a very good team. They're not a team you can take lightly. And coming off the Oklahoma game, you could see a little bit of a letdown factor that could maybe play in this one. I don't think so. I think Baylor's going to be ready to roll. I think Baylor gets the win here, but another very tough game on the schedule. And then they continue it, another home game, but another tough matchup with TCU. TCU, very good team, certainly good enough to beat Baylor. Baylor's at home. I think Baylor is a little bit better than them at this point. So I'm going to say Baylor gets the win against TCU as well. But again, very similar to all of the other games we've talked about up to this point. Very closely matched teams. The entire Big 12 is that way this year. A lot of teams in that same range of talent, in my opinion. TCU is no different. I think Baylor gets the win. They're at home. I like their staff a little bit better. I like their roster a little bit better. But still, keep an eye out for that one as well. And then they end the year on a Friday at Texas. And this is another one that is just super interesting. It's a very difficult game. I think Baylor is probably a little bit better than Texas. I don't think they're dramatically better than Texas, but they are definitely a little bit better than Texas. You know, I think Sarkisian is going to have Texas doing much better in his second year than he did in his first year. But they're also at Texas. And so being at Texas, I think by this point in the year, a lot of Texas's new additions will kind of be gelled together and rolling well. It's on a Friday, which is kind of a weird thing, but it's going to be a really close game. It's going to be really tight. I think I'm going to side with Texas here, mainly because of the home field advantage, and say that Texas gets a big win there to round out the season. And it's another one, though. Baylor has a very good shot in. Baylor could definitely win that game. Definitely one to keep an eye on as well. Most all of the games on the schedule for them this year are that way. So that would make Baylor 9-3 on the year, which is a very good record considering just how competitive I expect the Big 12 to be this season and how early they still are under Dave Aranda. He's still very young in building this program, so it's not a program that you should just expect to steamroll through things and not face a lot of adversity, especially when you're that young into building a program. There are a lot of things that come up that are unforeseen. And I think this program is certainly on the rise. They're certainly a program to fear going forward, but I just don't think they're quite ready to dominate the entire conference just yet and take that next step and be, the real dominant force here. So I think anywhere between 8 and 10 wins for them is reasonable, depending on how you feel about the other teams in the conference at this point. If things go really bad, you could see 7 wins or even 6 wins, just depending on how bad they go. If they go really well, you could see 10-2, maybe even 11-1. there's a lot of teams in that same, 8 to 10 win range, I think, for the Big 12 this year. And it's just because they're lacking a true powerhouse next season. But like I said, there are a lot of similarly matched teams that are going to battle it out. And I expect Baylor to be right in the mix of all of that. Anyway, that'll do it for this one. Let me know down below in the comment section where you guys agree with me and or disagree with me on the Baylor schedule in 2022. Tell me what record you think they're going to have next year and who, if anybody, they're going to lose to. Also, if you've made it this far in the video, be sure to go ahead and leave a like because it does help out the channel tremendously. Lets me know you're enjoying this content. And subscribe for more college football content in the future. Like I said, I'm going to be making a video for every single Power 5 team. I have done the SEC, I have done the ACC, plus Notre Dame. And now I'm working through the Big 12. After that, we're going to move on to the Pac 12 and keep it rolling. So, thank you all so much for watching. I'll see you guys next time.